Hi, welcome to my capstone. It's on the magic of Disney storytelling, and I want you to picture the perfect place. It's sunny, it's warm, you're walking down a nice street, you see little cute buildings all around you. In front of you is a little castle. You smell churros as you walk. You see little girls in princess dresses running around. I think you know the place I'm talking about. It's Disney World. My favorite place. It is the land of churros and of princesses, brick streets, magic castles, Dole Whips, everything. Today I want to talk to you about how Disney pulls it off. How Disney uses stories to create a real kind of magic. My favorite Disney story, of course, is my own Disney story. This is the first time that I ever went to Disney World. I was 16 here. Actually, I was only 2. But Mickey Mouse, coincidentally, was 77 here. Looking pretty good, if I do say so myself. But if I'm being honest, I don't really remember this trip to Disney. So I want to tell you about a different time to Disney that I actually do remember, when I was 7. And I was adorable. So I wonder if any of you have ever been to Hollywood Studios. It's in Disney World in Florida. And maybe you have, and I'd love to hear your story. But for now, here's my story. Let me zoom out a bit. This is the Tower of Terror. It's a ride in Hollywood Studios, and it's a 13-story elevator drop. And when I was 7 and just barely tall enough to ride this ride, this was scary stuff. Really scary. But then one trip, my dad offered to take me. My sisters, they were too scared to go. And so, of course, I had to say yes and one of them. And crazy enough, I said yes, and so we ran across the park and we got in line. Getting in line, this is what we saw. The line weaves you through a haunted hotel. And it was creepy, very creepy. So how could a little 7-year-old girl not get scared? Especially when we got to this, the door into the actual ride. Even to this day, looking at this door, I still get pretty nervous. But like a good dad, my dad offered to hold my hand. But no thanks, said little Alexandria, way too big to admit that she was scared. So we got on the ride and the ride started. On the first drop, I thought I was going to die. So I quickly grabbed my dad's hand. And then I did the next reasonable thing a little 7-year-old girl would do. I bit my dad's hand. And I bit it as hard as I could, as if my life depended on it. And funny enough, I didn't even realize that I was doing it at the time, but my dad sure did, and he had the indents on his hand to prove it getting off the ride. This story has now become a classic tale that we tell whenever we're in line for the ride. And even though it did scar me for a little bit and it took me some time to get back on the ride, it's still a funny story that I love to listen to. The thing is that people love to listen to stories, especially good stories told by good storytellers. And Disney does a really good job of this. People love their classic movies like Sleeping Beauty, The Lion King, one of my favorites, and Cinderella. And well, they're coming up with more and more every year. And the Bible tells us that children are a gift from the Lord. And God knew that we would love our children, and not just the serious stuff, but the fun stuff too. And those memories are some of the best memories you'll ever have, especially memories at Disney with your kids. Disney creates memories no matter the age. And honestly, most of my favorite memories are at Disney, and they're with my family. My parents, my sisters, my grandparents. And speaking of grandparents, this is my grandma, or my Grammy, and she told me a story about when she was at Disney, one of her favorite memories. Sure, she loved to ride the rides and stuff, but her favorite memories were with us when we were little, seeing our faces light up as we would see the princesses and watch the fireworks and watch the parades. Those were precious memories to her. Her daughter, my mom, told me a Disney story too. And well, I'm not even in it. It's not even at a Disney park, or even in the theaters. It's at her childhood home, where every Sunday, her and her family would get a lap full of popcorn and apples. And they would watch The Wonderful World of Disney on TV, which would broadcast a new Disney movie every week. It was one of her favorite memories. Recently, I have been watching the Imagineering story on Disney+. Maybe you've seen it. It's a documentary about Disney's Imagineers. The documentary tells the story about Disneyland opening day, 1955. It was the first Disney park to open, and well, let's just say they weren't ready to open when opening day came around. But as they say, the show must go on, and it was crunch time. Walt Disney didn't want to wait to show the world Disneyland, and so the doors opened to the awaiting crowds, even with paint still drying and the concrete still wet. And the story goes that heels of women's shoes actually sunk into the sidewalk as they were walking towards the castle. But it wasn't the paint or the concrete that the families remembered. It was the memories and the magic. The Imagineering story also talks about another park, this time Disney World in Florida. 26 years later, it was opening day of Magic Kingdom, 1971. And it was deja vu for Disney all over again. The sun was coming up, and the paint was still drying, and the concrete was still wet. So what else could they do but use their imaginations? Not long after, there was the thumping of helicopters. And the giant fans for the next few hours dried the paint and the concrete just enough for the doors to open to the awaiting crowds. And like they say, the rest is history. Disney World opened to the awaiting crowds, and it was a success, and the happiest place on earth was born. But rumor has it that the heels of the women's shoes actually still sunk into the sidewalk as they were walking towards the castle. Every ride, every restaurant, every part of the park is a story in its own. The people behind the scenes of the park are called Imagineers. They're a unique blend of artists and engineers brought together by Walt to make his dreams become a reality. They built Disneyland, and they've built everything since. The intentionality of the parks, the stories, every little detail you see, is done by the Imagineers for us to enjoy. From the very beginning, Disney was a company unlike any other. Something very special that Disney does is they don't see their employees as employees or workers, but they see them as cast members, people helping the story to come along. The cast members are planting the seed of storytelling in everything that they do. The storytelling in the parks, on television, in the movies, in the stores, everywhere you go. They're cast members planting the story. The Disney movies are very special too. They inspire the parks and, of course, their audiences as well. Disney has the most talented people for the perfect recipe. They only get the best actors, producers, composers, animators for the best stories. The key to their movies are the emotions, whether it's happy, sad, scared, funny, and sometimes even at the same time. One of my personal favorite Disney movies is Up, a 2009 cartoon about, well, it's about a lot of things. But there's that opening scene. You probably know the one. And many of you have watched it, probably even cried during it. Well, let me just show you it so you can know what I mean. And there it is. Every emotion and not a single word spoken gets me every time. And that's one of the finest scenes in the Disney catalog for sure. It's a beautiful example of storytelling. If you haven't seen Up, I would highly recommend it. It is a great movie. But one of the best Disney stories is the story of the man himself, Walt Disney. Walt was who started the company, and in 1928 he drew ears on a cartoon mouse that would forever change the world, Mickey Mouse. Dreaming big and working hard, Walt created story after story, bringing happiness to an entire generation and to people all over the world. He opened Disneyland, Disney World, and many other parks followed. He built a company dedicated to making happiness for people. He knew the power of imagination, and that just one spark of inspiration is at the heart of all creation. The Bible says there's no greater love than this, that someone lay down their life for their friend. There are so many ways Disney stories impact our lives. Every emotion is just a part of life. Sharing emotions with friends is something that Disney shows very well. My cousin told me her story recently of how she just saw herself in a Disney movie. She told me of how her parents had recently moved from her childhood home to a new home, with new friends, a new school. Everything was just a bit different. That summer, she went and saw Inside Out, a story about a girl named Riley who moves away from her childhood home to a new school, new friends, everything just different. My cousin thought that Inside Out was like a documentary about her own life. And as she started doing the new life, she had this story to keep her company, to let her know that she wasn't alone. She said it was magical because somebody understood her, and somebody showed it in a wonderful movie like Inside Out. She felt Disney had reached down into her life and made a movie just for her. To be honest, I didn't realize the important relatability is in storytelling. Disney does. They realize how important it is, and they do it so well in every movie. I can actually remember the first time I ever saw Frozen in theaters. I actually ended up seeing it 6 times in theaters. But the first time I ever saw it, I remember feeling so great. I left the theater so happy, and I had to go and double check that I didn't have any superpowers that were hidden from the world. but sadly I wasn't able to make a snowman with just my hands. But even though I didn't have superpowers, I did feel empowered, and that, like Anna and Elsa and the rest of the characters, I could do anything. Disney's magic is for everyone, and a lot of people look at Disney and they think that it's more for little kids, but that's far from the truth. People of all ages all over the world have Disney stories of their own, with memories that they've created. Even something as simple as a magical movie in the theaters can create a memory that will last a lifetime. There's so much joy in everything that Disney does. Every single Disney trip I've been on have been the happiest times of my life. I recently went after the pandemic, and a lot of things were changed because of COVID. But restrictions and all, I had a smile under my mask the whole day. Disney did such a great job. From watching Disney and observing what they do, I have learned how to spread joy like they do. I've learned the power of kindness through watching them and what they do. Remember, we're talking about storytelling. There's power in these stories, and they trigger our imaginations, they transport us to new places, and they impact our thoughts. When it comes to stories, we don't want just any story. We want stories, like in the Bible, how it says, stories that are true, honorable, just, pure, lovely. We want stories about these things. One of my favorite stories was from the last time I went to Disney, and I actually explored the park by myself while my family waited in line for the Haunted Mansion. And walking down Main Street, seeing all of the people smiling with their families and all the cute buildings, it truly was a magical moment for me. I had to leave Main Street sadly and rejoin my family back in line, and as I walked across the park, it began to rain on me. I mean, it poured on me. I was quickly drenched from head to toe, but the whole time my smile was from ear to ear. Even in the pouring rain, I was living my best life. Disney is my favorite place, and it's just special. I love it when I'm there. I could sit on a bench on Main Street and just look at the castle all day, watching all the people go by so happy, experiencing the joy that flows out of that place. Disney creates stories in you, whether it's biting your dad's hand, going with grandma, or even just watching a movie in the theater with your friends. It's these stories which make the magic. The world of Disney is a world of joy and happiness, cultivated through diligence and intentionality and storytelling. And I love it. Thank you for listening.